Hello, everyone. I'm Don Hutchenson, and I'm a results leader.
You're listening to ResultsLeader.fm. Being a thought leader is easy. Getting results is hard. This show is for the results leader who lives and dies by their results. Here is your host and Chief Results Leader, Jonathan Rivera.
Yes, y'all, it's time for another interview here on ResultsLeader.fm, and I've got a special treat for you today. This conversation was not at all what I expected. This guy is an entrepreneur for 45 years, an inventor, author, coach. He's got the Discover Your Talent program and podcast. He's a career planning specialist, and this conversation went totally different than I had expected. We talked about philosophy, about getting quiet, about discovering who you are and what you really want. Let's jump into today's interview with Mr. Don Hutchenson. Don, welcome to the show. How are you today?
I'm doing great. It's a great pleasure to be with you.
All right, brother. So we are going to run into this with the easiest question you've ever heard. What book or books have you given most as a gift?
What book or books? Oh, gosh. I love The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. And there are probably dozens more, but that's the one that comes directly to mind. I also like Don't Waste Your Talent, the 8 critical steps to discovering what you do best, which, by the way, I co-authored.
Now, The Power of Now, I haven't heard. I mean, I read it, but nobody has said that before. So what is it about that book in particular that makes it so important to you?
Well, after a lifetime of study, I think the biggest problem we face on this plane of existence is consciousness. And I think and that's what Tolle talks about, it's been talked about for thousands of years. I think when we can put through whatever modality, get into ourselves and into our being and understand ourselves from the inside out, we can achieve our goals, but also contribute to the world. And I think without consciousness, we're sort of living in the matrix.
Isn't that what separates us from the animals? Is that consciousness?
Well, yeah, it's really funny. I think animals are utterly conscious, but not in an intellectual, spiritual way, just in a beingness way. But yeah, it is. It is.
Love it.
I'm a big animal rights advocate, and I think they're amazing sentient beings.
Yes. So let's talk about failure. And I'd like to know, how has an apparent failure set you up for later success?
Well, I was blessed with using my talents from early age. After I got out of the Army and graduated from Emory, I got into publishing for, about 11 years, and then in advertising for about 11 years. And I was blessed to co-create an innovative career planning program, still going on today, but we got hit by the dot-com crash in 2001. And we were expanding, we were all over the world, and we had to do a reboot and a restart. And it was a very sobering experience, to say the least. And I just had to go inside in myself and connect with the universe and realize that things happen for a reason. And I had to reconnoiter, rejigger, if you will, and move forward. And now, many years later, we've come back with the podcast and with access to that intellectual property and are spreading the word about the Discover Your Talent program all over the world. But there was a number of years there where we weren't able to do that. And I just had to, like I said, go inside and rethink and reconfigure my vision and strategy.
Now, Don, what would you say was the biggest lesson from that experience?
Well, just that, that life happens, and, there's the purpose for everything. And as long as you, like I said about consciousness, as long as you stay true to yourself and are guided by your own values and your compass and try to do good in the world, it works out. It works out. It's not about the ego side. If you get caught up in the ego side, which I certainly have for much of my career, I'm sorry to say, it's a bottomless pit that is never filled.
Well, now you brought something up that I have to dig further into.
All right.
So we haven't talked about that enough on this show, and you just brought up the ego side, and you said that most of your career you spent in the ego side. How did you begin to separate from that ego?
Well, it usually happens. I guess I just hit a wall, and it's really a couple of things. I discovered at some point in there that while I've been successful in many ways, according to the metrics of entrepreneurship, that I wasn't really feeling fulfilled on a spiritual or emotional level. And like I said, I was doing well and had a couple of great businesses and great partners and clients, but there was a gap in there. And the gap was just connecting with my who I am at the highest level. It's like what Eckhart talks about, and others have talked about for years. There's the egoic self, and then there's the true you. And it doesn't have to do with external factors and wealth, power, and status and all those things at all. It just has to do with, I don't care what your religion is or what your spirituality, but there's, in my view anyway, there's a higher consciousness in this cosmos that we can connect to that, gives us peace and balance and allows us to do our best work and contribute to the world and to those we love.
Man, I can talk about this all day, but I better get back on script or my team will kill me. So let's talk about investments, Don. What would you say is the most worthwhile investment you have ever made?
You mean in terms of financial or just in terms of any other aspect?
Whatever comes to mind. It doesn't matter if it's financial or otherwise, just the investment that you think has been great for you.
Well, in spite of what I said about hitting the wall and everything, which is true, in my early 20s, I don't know what led me on this path, JR, but I just started, maybe it was the series Kung Fu, I'm not sure. You're too young to remember that, right?
David Carradine?
Oh, okay, good. Well, anyway, I started studying Tai Chi and yoga and went to listen to the Maharishi Mahesh Yoga talk and just realized that my sort of outer directed focus wasn't doing it for me. And I just plodded my way through that. I studied Tai Chi with a Taiwanese consulate in Atlanta for a couple of years. And the more I got out of that outer directed focus and ego focus, the more I felt a sense of calm and could connect more with, my innate self. And when I did that, whether I was making tons of money or scraping by, it didn't matter. At least I was present in the moment, the power of now. And, I could deal with almost anything.
There's a peace in that, and I can hear it emanating from you. And I'm not quite there yet, but I'm starting to learn ups and downs. If you can connect to that power and tap into that source, there is a peace where I think that's what's missing in the world, by the way, is people are looking for answers externally. And what you're describing here is the answers inside. And I think not enough people know that.
Well, and it's a hard journey. I mean, I've been around for many decades, and I'm not saying that I'd go along in a kumbaya state. I mean, life is hard, especially as being an entrepreneur. And so it's a constant battle. That's why Tolle and other great philosophers and thinkers just talk about the basics, remembering to breathe, for goodness sakes. I mean, if you talk about consciousness in public, people think, well, I'm conscious, I'm living and breathing. Well, yeah, okay, that means you're physically conscious, but are you spiritually conscious? Are you emotionally conscious? And that, it's a constant effort. I get caught up in the matrix and my head will get bollocksed up in some stressful time. And I just say, wait a minute, hello, is this real? It's just the current situation you're in. Can you just take a step back, please? And, get your act together and, be here now, play with your kitties, take a walk. It always works, but I don't always do that. I think everybody, I'm sure the Dalai Lama and Eckhart Tolle and others have to, stay mindful of that because it's not a state we're born into.
Yeah, man. So let's think back over the last 5 years. What new belief, behavior, or habit has most improved your life?
Belief, behavior, or habit. Really, honestly, it's not a spiritual side. It's sort of just an overall political and economic and social side, just realizing that the systems we live in, I learned about systems years ago from a brilliant partner, psychologist. The systems we live in, I wrote a book called The Lemon Conspiracy, they're just systems, whether it's family, religion, organizations, or whatever. And their agenda is just what the agenda is, to move the school forward or move the business forward. And it's, we call that the system self. And what I realized, it's just so hard, whether we're talking international politics or business or whatever, it's just so hard for the well-meaning individuals in those systems to realize that everything they're doing is not the only truth. Again, whether it's the political side or the economic side or the health side, because the systems I was in advertising for a decade and I know how media works. And because there's so much, especially now with the internet, there's so much power in the internet and the ability to control the messaging that it's very hard for folks to get outside that and sort of dig below and see what's really going on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, what you really described, or okay, I'm going to be a nerd, but you described getting out of the matrix, realizing the program is running, and you can be optionally in it or out of it because you talked about that earlier.
Yeah.
So I love that idea, and I subscribe to that as well. One of the reasons I'm free today was because I didn't do well in school, and I didn't subscribe to that system, and it allowed me to discover new things. So I'm glad that you brought that. So let's go back to have a little fun. What would you say are some bad recommendations you hear in your area of expertise?
Well, it's just the glib recommendations. I mean, there's so many talented and gifted women and men out there, but it's any recommendation that is more tactical than strategic. I mean, if you're in the career planning space, which I've been in for many years, when you talk about like I said, and I've been on the internet for many, many years. So when you talk about the power of using LinkedIn for your interviewing, or you talk about all these interviewing techniques and everything, very, very seminal, but they're tactics. They're tactics. And so I'm a believer. In fact, if you ask 100 people, in my experience, JR, where do you start in your career planning? The vast majority would say, well, of course, you start with your why. Well, why is a good question, but I've studied this for about 32 years, and I've studied the geniuses. I'm just a good student. You start with your who. If you don't know yourself from the inside out, the Oracle at Delphi, know thyself. If you don't know yourself from the inside out, how can you possibly come up with your why, your what, your how? In my experience of working with thousands of people, my team and I, you can't do it. So that's the reason the Gallup reports 84% of people around the world and 67% of people in America, when asked if they are fulfilled by their career, say no.
I didn't even expect this conversation to go this way. We're talking to a career planning guy, and we're getting philosophy like crazy. All right, I know you were getting into that, and we were just about to get into my favorite part where we talk about results. But first, I want to ask you a question. Are you picking up what we're laying down on this show? Are you digging what we are sharing? If you are, why not make yourself a hero today and share this with somebody who can use it? Put this out on your social media channels. #ResultsLeaderFM. I'll be out there looking for you, and I'll make sure to boost it up too when I see you. Now that we've got that out of the way, let's jump back into the interview. We're going to move into the namesake of the show. We're going to talk about results now. And I'd like to know, in your opinion, Don, why do results matter?
They're just a vital metric. They're vital metrics. I do a certain exercise regimen. I've been healthy as a bear all my life, but had some surgery a few years ago that required even more discipline about that. And so I just track. I'm pretty anal about it. I'm a right brain guy, so I keep records and everything like crazy. So if I track those metrics and see that I'm doing the stretching and exercising and so forth, then it just keeps me honest. And whether it's the ROI in a business, which is vital, or the performance indices of a team, or what you're doing for clients. Well, who was the dude that was so great at this? I'm drawing a blank. It was many decades ago that talked about, you can't manage what you can't measure. Who was that guy?
Was that Rohn? Jim Rohn?
No, it was before him. It'll come to me. But yeah, he was a guy that was an innovative business analyst, and he was a real innovator.
Peter Drucker.
It wasn't Drucker. It was before Drucker.
Really?
No, Drucker's one of my heroes, too. He said most people think they know what they're good at, and they're usually wrong. But no, this was another guy that was earlier that had this metrics thing that was so important. And American business sort of scoffed at him. And he went over to Japan, and Japan just became a world leader based on the fact that you can't manage what you can't measure. And again, forgive me, Jared, it'll come to me later who that guy was, but he was a genius.
Is that the Six Sigma guy? Or even before that?
Even later, and I just am drawing a complete blank.
So nerdy. I'll stop throwing you off.
No, I love it. I mean, I'm into these details. I think the great women and men thinkers of the world are, what keep us inspired and going.
Yes, sir. So let's think back in the last 5 years. What new realization has helped you get better results for your clients?
Oh, gosh. The realization that I've really got to be even more transparent and open to their realities. I mean, I've been studying this I've been in business 45 years and studying this piece for 32 years. And, I I don't think I'm any guru. I think I've got some experience, but if I don't listen and put myself in his or her shoes and really do my best to get their perspective before I come up with any kind of suggestions, I'm not doing well by that. I have to be really put myself in their shoes, walk a mile in his or her shoes, from every perspective, because who knows what they're dealing with? They may be dealing with a business or strategy issue, but there may be an emotional, physical, or spiritual issue that's underlying that. And I want to be, if I'm a great listener and a connector, then I can find that out and relate to it and offer positive feedback.
Gosh, so underrated. Listening and then not poisoning the well with your take on it till you've actually been empathetic and heard where they're coming from. That is powerful.
Well, Daniel Goleman, in 1990, emotional intelligence. I mean, it's been around, studied by all the other great thinkers, but he put it in, he codified it. And what he showed was just this, that even in the techie industries, even in Silicon Valley, where you think that analytical skills and technical skills are everything, they're not. They're vital, but the leaders who have high emotional intelligence, awareness, and compassion, they rise to the top because they can hear all points of view and do just what I said that I try to do with my clients. It's hard.
You're not kidding. So let's get introspective here for a second. And I'd like to ask you, what area of your business would you like better results?
Gosh, we've been on the internet for a long time and studied all the great women and men thinkers. And it's just so vast and it changes so much, as you know, because of the algorithms and the ways of making it better and so forth. Just staying up with that is difficult. And so just making sure that my team and I are, up to the moment and using the modalities to the best of our abilities to service our clients and our companies. I mean, you look at all the changes on whatever you're using, from Facebook to Instagram to websites to, and all these leaders like HubSpot and all these people who've been around forever that help you. But it's just, sometimes it can just be this huge overload. And you just have to pick the areas that you think will help you and do your best to explore the different modalities and optimize them to the best of your ability.
Absolutely. That's where the strategy comes into play and less about the tactics, as you said earlier. So let's talk about the results that you are most proud of.
It's interesting you bring that up, JR. We did the first company after the ad business I sold. We created a company. I had an idea, and I had this brilliant friend from the Army that I met that was a PhD in psychology, and we created this company called the Highlands Program, which we did for 11 years. It's going on today by this amazing innovative group called the Highlands Company. And it's a whole person approach to looking at your life and career. In fact, I'll really geek you out. This is a graphic that goes back about 25 years, which really talks about looking at all the factors that go into that have been studied for hundreds of years that we just put into a program. And very, very interesting. It starts with innate abilities and then it goes to other factors, skills, interests, values, and so forth. And what I was most proud of is that when we empirically, we talked about results earlier, and when we empirically studied that over many years with Fortune 500 clients, we found that when people went inside and did the inner work like we've been talking about here, and understood themselves from the inside out, that the results, the ROI on themselves, their life, and the bottom line were profound. We measured 9 indices, from reduction in stress to performance to productivity to connection to company. And these are extensive surveys over, it was a 10-week program. And we found, if you got a 10 or 11% increase, you think, whoa, that's huge. We didn't. We got a 36% increase.
Wow.
But it was them. The program was good, and again, we are great masters to put that together. But it's just, and I'm amazed that today, even many years later, that with all the resources that the huge organizations have, there's still, and again, this is my point of view. I'm just one guy out there trying to make it work. But they're just these one-trick ponies, and they're these sort of individual answers. Oh, you take this, or you do this, but in fact, we call it the whole person approach. If you look at yourself organically, we're emotional, spiritual, intellectual, physical, social beings. So if you're trying to get into a good college or move your career to a higher level, how can you say, what are the skills I need to get to the next level? Well, that's 1/8 of the problem at the very most. You've got to look at yourselves. How does that tie into what I want for me and my family, or for my my entrepreneurial business or my corporation. And it sounds, just this philosophical, metaphysical, 100,000 foot level. It's very pragmatic. It's very pragmatic. I use the example of, I don't like, I was a veteran. War is one of the worst tools that we've ever used, but we've had to at times. But you don't go into battle saying, oh, well, let's just get into this without a strategy behind it. Or if you're a sports team, you don't take on another opponent without understanding their strengths and weaknesses and your strengths and weaknesses. Well, it's the same in our personal life journey. You've got to know yourself more holistic.
Man, that's missing in the world today. And I'm glad you're bringing it. I'm glad you brought it to the show. We're coming up to the end. What would you like to say to our listeners as we're wrapping up?
Well, wherever you are in your life and career, whether you're in high school, heading off to college, or pre-retirement, I would encourage you to do one thing first, and that is stop. Speaking of Eckhart Tolle, he was getting his PhD in England, and he hit a wall, and it was just profound. And he sat on a park bench for 2 years and found himself. Well, we don't really need to sit on the park bench for 2 years. However, if we don't get out of the lemon conspiracy, out of the matrix, and we don't pull time away, even if it's 10 minutes a day, to journal or take a walk. I live on the internet, but put down your phone. If you can just get quiet, and if we've known since the dawn of man, then the answers that have been in you since your inception can come to light, and you can at least see what they are and begin to engage them in whatever depth that you can. So if you don't stop, then it's hard to get the insights to start again and to rebuild or to build on what you've already done.
That is beautiful. So where can our listeners go to find out more about you?
Well, we have a podcast, as you know, the Discover Your Talent podcast. And that's, we do that a couple of times a week and have for 5 years. So, they can go there. They can also, they can check out my LinkedIn profile. It's Don Hutchenson on LinkedIn.
Everybody go to Discover Your Talent podcast to hear more from Mr. Don Hutchenson. Thank you for bringing a whole new perspective to the show. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing. And you, my dear listener, I feel like you should be thanking us for this conversation, but I'm going to go ahead and thank you for your time. We will be back.
Yeah, I want to tell you too, JR, what I'll do, just because I appreciate the opportunity so much and your vision. If a couple of listeners, I guess maybe as many as 2 listeners, want to reach out, I'd be glad to give them a 30-minute feedback, on just what I know based on this conversation, and for free, of course, and see if it helps them along their journey.
Man, super, super generous. We will share links to everything in the show notes. This has been another ResultsLeader.fm episode. Thank you for tuning in, and we will be back in your earbuds next time. That is a wrap for another edition of ResultsLeader.fm. If you are out there getting results for your clients and you want to be featured on the show, go to ResultsLeader.fm now and apply to be on the show. And if you love what you're hearing, share the show, give us a rating and review, do anything to help us get the message out there. Thought leadership is easy, but results leadership is hard.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.